Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the Krsnatarian way of cooking. I am Radhika Pyari Devidasi and today I am going to share with you a very cheesy and super loved recipe of lasagna. Lasagna is an Italian dish and it is made with pasta noodles. There are two kinds of sauce involved, tomato and white cheese sauce. So let's look into the recipe. First in a pot, I am going to boil around 4 to 5 cups of water. Then I'm going to add around a tablespoon of olive oil. Along with that, I'm going to add around a teaspoon of salt. This method is good so that the pasta noodles do not stick to one another, and even if they stick, it can easily come off because of the oil and the salt. The cook time will also reduce because of the salt. So just make sure you add the pasta and then cover it and then cook it for around 15 to 20 minutes. I have used around 9 sheets of the noodles. You don't want to clog the pasta. So what I did, I first did 6 and then later on I have done 3. So while this is cooking, here I have some homemade vegetable broth. This is like around 1/3 cup, and I have used a stick of celery and 500 grams of kale leaves which I have cut into strip size. And then I'm going to add it once the vegetable stock actually starts boiling, and then I'll reduce the heat and I'm going to let it cook for 15 minutes. Kale usually takes a lot of time to cook, so it's good that it will cook on for 15 minutes on extremely low heat. So I'm going to cover it. Now I will be showing you how to prepare the sauce. First, take 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a skillet. Now in this add around 2 inches of minced ginger, you have to make sure that this ginger is sauteed well. The heat should be on medium. Now in this I am going to add around half teaspoon of hing, which is also called as asafoetida. Now in this around 2 to 3 sticks of celery which are nicely chopped. If you don't have celery sticks, then you can use cabbage. Now I have added around half teaspoon of salt, not too much because I'm going to use tomato puree. That is like around 400 grams of tomato puree. If you don't have tomato puree, you can use crushed tomatoes. I'm checking on this noodle. This noodle looks cooked completely, so I'm going to discard the water and then put it into cold water. Here even the vegetable is done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty the kale and celery in a bowl, and I'm going to keep this vegetable liquid because this is the stock we need in making the white sauce. Make sure you empty the kale leaves completely. 1-2 pieces is fine, but just don't make it too much visible. So here I have added around a teaspoon of olive oil, and while that is boiling, I'm going to see this cooking of the vegetable has been done. This was on medium heat and it has nicely sauteed. Now here I'm going to add around 400 grams of tomato puree. You can use crushed tomatoes as well if you don't have tomato puree. Now remember that the crushed tomatoes or the tomato puree, they already have salt, and that's why I did not use much salt. Even with the cheese sauce which we are going to make, that will also have a lot of salt. So just make sure that do not add too much salt, otherwise your lasagna will get salty. In order to reduce the tanginess of these crushed tomatoes or the puree, I do add sugar in it. So I will just tell you how much sugar we have to add in it. I'm going to add around a tablespoon of paprika. This paprika powder is not hot. And then I have added around a teaspoon of white pepper powder. Mixing everything well. Now here I am going to add around a tablespoon of sugar. Keep the heat on low. Now I'm going to add around a quarter cup of water to it, just so that the entire sauce is a little bit smooth. Cook it for around 5 to 7 minutes. Around a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg powder, mix well, cook for around a minute, turn off the stove and let it cool down. Now for the white sauce, I have used almond milk. You can use regular milk, but I have used unsweetened almond milk. That is like around 100 ml. Now in this, I am going to add around 1.5 tablespoon of whole wheat flour. You can use durum wheat flour as well, not a problem. And I'm going to whisk it well. Just do 1 tablespoon first and then the other half tablespoon later. Just make sure it whisks well, it's smooth. Now while that vegetable stock or vegetable liquid is actually boiling, one thing I wanted to mention is that I had added around half cup of vegetable broth more and then boiled it, and then I added this milk mixture. Nicely mix everything. Now as soon as this milk mixture starts coming to a boil, then you have to add the cheese. Now this mozzarella cheese I have added around 200 grams, and I've added batch by batch, not all at once. So just add it and then whisk it so that it mixes well, melts well with the milk mixture. Now this entire cheese sauce needs to be cooked for around 10 to 15 minutes. So the quantity of the milk will reduce to half, and then after this, half teaspoon of white pepper powder and then a pinch of nutmeg powder. Mix everything nicely and turn off the stove. Let this cheese mixture cool down, and now in a casserole, add this pizza sauce. You just have to coat the base a little bit with this pizza sauce. During this time, I have preheated the oven on 400 Fahrenheit. And now I'll start placing the lasagna noodles. So I'm going to place 3 each layer like this. On top of this, now I'm going to add the white cheese sauce. Evenly spread it. Now add the kale and celery mixture. We have to use this mixture on 2 layers, so just use half of it now and the other half later. Grate some mozzarella cheese. Another layer of the lasagna noodles. Add the pasta sauce. Spread it evenly. Make sure that these pasta, they are covered nicely with the sauce or the cheese sauce, because during the time of baking you want to make sure that there is enough moisture on the noodles, otherwise they may get dry and hard. Now add the kale and the celery mixture. Add the white sauce. some mozzarella cheese, again the red sauce, now on top of this the last layer of the lasagna noodles. Now I'm going to add the last bit of the pasta sauce which is remain. Just going to empty it, cover it nicely. Top of this I'm going to add the white sauce. The total amount of vegetable broth I have used, including the one in which we boiled the kale, is around a cup, and then on top of that the milk and the cheese and the flour mixture. Now on top of this I'm putting some sliced tomatoes. Now I'll grate the last layer of the cheese. Now on this last layer you have to add enough cheese so that the entire lasagna is covered properly. After covering it with the cheese, then I'm going to sprinkle some white pepper powder on top and then bake this lasagna in the oven for around 35 minutes. This is on 400 Fahrenheit. I'm going to let it cool down for around 10 minutes and now start slicing it. So I will be dividing it into three parts. The thing is, the reason why we let this lasagna cool down a little bit is because in the beginning, when the lasagna comes out of the oven, the entire sauce is boiling, and if you are cutting the lasagna, then all the sauce may ooze out, and it will be difficult for removing the lasagna out. So I'm placing it in this manner very carefully so the layers are not separated. So here the lasagna is ready. I'm going to place a tulsi leaf and offer it at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Kindly support the channel by subscribing to it if you liked watching my video. Thank you so much for watching. Hare Krishna.